This is cool. Also, I just want to start off by saying this is pretty full circle. Like when I started at Power, we had done, so you have to go a lot earlier than that chart, and we had done just under $8 million in revenue the year before I got there. And we used to have qualified remodelers sitting around the office, and part of our sales presentation was pointing to it because no one knew who we were. And it was like, trying to build confidence in customers that we're a real company, But I remember looking at the list and being like there's a company that does $100 million. And that was an important seed to kind of get planted in our heads early, that level of scale was possible, and a belief that something could be more than that. And as far as me finding Power, I'll start a little bit earlier with just kind of my background, because I was such a different person beforehand. And the company, I can't overstate how much it changed my life. So I grew up in New York, and regular blue-collar family. My mom was a special ed teacher in the South Bronx. My dad was a cook. And another important part of my upbringing is I'm severely dyslexic, so was like functionally illiterate till I was about 16. So going to college was like a very big maybe. And I ended up getting into school. I played soccer, which is kind of the only way I got in. And I went to American University, and I bring that up because that's where I met Corey, who's the co-CEO of the company and my best friend. We both played soccer there together. And we're very different. He got all A's and is brilliant, and I got solid like D's and just had to get through. But I was really involved with my internships, and they're all nonprofits. I was raised that like my life's work was supposed to be service. So when I graduated, my plan wasn't to go to Power, it was to go to law school. All the people that I worked with at these internships and these nonprofits were lawyers, so I thought that's what you have to do. But there was going to be a gap there because I had to take the LSATs, and I was broke. So I needed to make some money. I didn't want to just keep bartending. And I found myself, and I say this because this is an important part of like what our growth strategy ended up being. I found myself in a situation that was really similar to, I think, most kids that don't come from privilege, that didn't go to the best schools, is I didn't have any options. So the only option that we had was my older brother had started working for Power a few years earlier, and he said that he could get us a job. And we didn't want to do that because we didn't want to go to Philadelphia. Neither of us are from there. We didn't want to work in the home improvement industry. We knew nothing about it, and I didn't want to work in sales. But we had no other options, and he said that it was mostly night work, so I could study for the LSATs during the day. So it was 1 year. I could handle it for 1 year. So we begrudgingly took the job. And when I showed up at Power, it was very, very different than the way anybody probably thinks of the organization today. It was really unimpressive. I wasn't surprised when I showed up to see that the office was kind of like in a strip mall, and it wasn't impressive looking inside. And the people weren't impressive. Not that it was bad people, but it was like a place that people kind of came to settle. And they weren't looking to grow themselves, they weren't looking to grow the business. The business didn't have a real mission. It was a good business, and they were just satisfied with kind of being good. So that wasn't inspirational. But there were things that we found that were unexpected in a really positive way, starting with the founders, Adam and Jeff. So I'm not a founder, obviously, I showed up entry level. Excuse me. The founders are like good people, good men, like capital G. Like they just cared to do the right thing. They wanted the employees to have good experiences. They wanted the customers to have good experiences. And that was nice to be able to follow people like that. They were also really metrics driven. You talked about Moneyball. Like they ran the business like Moneyball back then. They really understood their KPIs and they measured everything. But the most important thing for us is that we came into an incredible training program that was 4 weeks. It was a canned presentation, which meant every word, it had to be completely memorized. So to someone with dyslexia, that is like the worst thing you can imagine. Graduating from it was still today probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And what it did is it took two kids that didn't know which end of a hammer to hold, and it taught us everything about company knowledge, product knowledge, installation methods, financing, you name it. And the result of that is that we had instantaneous success. As soon as we started running appointments 4 weeks later, we were earning customers' business. And that changed, right there changed who I am and like how I felt about myself. It was the first time in my life that I have ever experienced financial independence. I was tracking to make about $125,000 my first year in sales. Excuse me, I'm really sorry. That's more money than either of my folks ever made combined. I didn't know that that was like possible in life, let alone for me. I was scared as a kid graduating that, you get conditioned if you don't go to the top schools, if you don't have connections, that you're never gonna kind of be more than where you came from. And I started questioning all of that and had a different level of confidence and belief in what was possible. Additionally, I was happy. I was working with my best friend Corey and for my brother. I believed in what we were talking about. We were talking about energy efficiency pretty early on. This is 2003. And I was surprised, although the place wasn't impressive, how happy I was.